Welcome to Planted, Finding Your Roots in STEM Careers. Journey with us as we navigate the winding path into plant-related careers with professionals who have taken root or are still branching out. I'm Megan Wiesbrook.
And I'm Jessica Turner-Scoff. Today we're talking about merging interests, especially if you have more than one passion. We're joined by a very special guest, Dr. Aurelie Jacquet, a postdoctoral researcher and a scientist at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And this is one of the premier medical institutes in the country, so we are extremely honored to have you here today, Aurelie.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
So, Aurelie, what do cross-country road trips, photography, and medicinal plants have in common?
Well, apparently they may have nothing in common unless you're an ethnopharmacologist. So my job as an ethnopharmacologist is to travel to remote cities and remote villages so I can meet with local people and healers because I want to learn how they use medicinal plants to treat symptoms of Parkinson's disease. You know, as of today, there are no treatments available to stop the progression of Parkinson's disease, and so my mission is to find medicinal plants that can help. And the great thing about my job is that I can use my passion for photography to document what I experience in the field, and I like to take pictures of the villages I visit and also the people I meet.
Well, Aurelie, we're really excited to learn more about you, your career, and the field of ethnopharmacology, which is not something that maybe everyone is familiar with, that it's the study of the use of medicinal plants and how local healers or community leaders use them for the treatment of different diseases. So we can't wait to hear about how you have merged your interest in science and photography, and why don't we just get started?
Aurelie, if we asked you back when you were younger what you wanted to be when you grew up, what would you have said?
When I was younger, I really knew that I wanted to work with plants, and I had a special interest in medicinal plants. And I thought that it would be really cool to learn how people use medicinal plants to treat diseases so we could make medicine for everybody. And at that time, I didn't know that such job existed. It's only later that I found out that this is called ethnopharmacology. So as soon as I figured that out, I started looking for more information about ethnopharmacology and how to become an ethnopharmacologist.
Well, I know that this is going to be kind of a tall order, but would it be possible for you to describe your career in a sentence?
So it's a tough question, but I would say that my career so far has been to figure out how to study medicinal plants in a way that serves healers and people in villages, but also scientists and patients in the U.S.
Now, we've been friends for quite some time now, and it always amazes me because I think your job is just so cool. You get to travel around the world, work with traditional communities, learning about medicinal plants, and then going back to the lab to effectively, save the world. So that's pretty amazing. But I'm going to ask you if you can boil it down to what the coolest part of your career so far has actually been.
Well, like you said, there are a lot of things involved in that work, so it's very interdisciplinary. So I have to choose two coolest things.
That's fair. We'll allow.
And so one is when I had the privilege to observe the plant harvest ritual by Native Americans. And these rituals involve songs and prayers and offerings as a sign of gratitude towards Earth and really all natural things. And it was really a privilege to witness such a ritual. And the second cool thing is when I made my first neuron from what we call undifferentiated cells. So basically, you start with a round cell that has the potential to become any type of cell of the body. For example, you can make heart cell, liver cell, or in my case, brain cell. So when you use the right kind of communication by feeding drugs and certain proteins to your round cell, slowly they become neurons. It takes about 3 weeks. And it's been really amazing to witness the transition from a round, undifferentiated cell into a fully differentiated neuron.
Well, we are so excited to learn more about not only your career and some of the amazing research that you've been able to do in some remote parts of the world, but how you've been able to combine your passion for photography both in your work and then to communicate your work as well. So can you speak a little bit about how you first combined your passion for photography with your job as a researcher?
Yeah, so the first time I combined photography and my job was when I was in the field. When I'm in the field, I meet a lot of people. I see where those people live. And I use photography to document these observations. And this way I'm able to show people a different culture, a different way of living. Also, the lab work involved a lot of microscopy, which is basically the photography of very small things. And in that case, instead of documenting how people live, I document how cells react to plant extract or how they look when they are sick, for example.
So are you doing any current projects right now where you're combining photography and lab work?
Yes. Right now, most of my work is done in the lab, so I mostly do microscopy, and I'm trying to see how neurons react to certain stressors. So what I do is I stress the cells with toxic compounds, and then I take images or movies to observe their reaction. For example, I can see if they change their shape. Then later, I will add plant extract to see if the plants can help the cells be healthier when they are stressed by these toxic compounds.
So I would imagine that the photography and the images that you create, even in the lab, are pretty powerful. Can you talk a little bit about how you use them to communicate your research?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I really think photography is very powerful, and it really helps visualize the world. It really connects all beings. And photography is critical to show people what other cultures do or what a sick cell looks like, for example. It's really a different narrative. It speaks directly to your imagination and your emotions. Also helps people understand concepts that they are not familiar with. So, for example, if I tell you that elderflower makes neurons stronger, it probably doesn't mean anything to you. But if I show you a dead cell and a living cell that has been treated with a elderflower extract, then you can first understand what the cell is, what it looks like, and then you can see how the extract really acted on the cell. You can see that one looks bigger and stronger than the other. And, who knows, maybe you start to care a little bit about this cell. And then when people care, then changes will happen.
You mentioned elderflower as a way to protect and make neurons stronger. How did you find out about that and incorporate that into your research?
Oh, so elderflower is a plant that is used by the Lumbee Indians in North Carolina. And so when I was interviewing the tribe, then, people told me about how they use this plant. And so I collected the plant and I made an extract and then tested that extract on the neurons that I culture in the lab. And so I saw that it had a lot of good benefits.
Aurelie, you're a very skilled science communicator. That's actually how we met, was a fellowship for Botany in Action from Phipps Conservatory in Pittsburgh, which is all about finding ways to connect your research to people. And, it seems like you've really found a great way to do that through your photography. Can you tell us a little bit about how this skill set has benefited you with your science communication, with your research, and everything in between?
Sure. Communication is very important at all stages of my work, from being the field work, talking with scientists or talking with the public. So when I communicate, for example, with the public, it's really important for me. It really keeps me grounded. And it's so easy to get lost in the details of everyday life and research, or to be frustrated when results don't look good or when there is too much work. So, it really reminds me of what is important and why I do what I do, which is trying to help people who suffer from diseases.
How has your ability to communicate science and gain people's trust impacted or enabled really strong partnerships for your research? Because I would imagine that some of the places that you're traveling to are relatively remote. And so you have to kind of build relationships and build trust in order to conduct the research and get the information from them that you need.
So I think the better you explain your science, the easier it is to create excitement in the public. But that's also true with other scientists. And, if my colleague scientists understand what I do and what I need, then they can give me advice, or even they may want to join and support my research effort. And really, this has no price, because researchers they don't work alone. It's all teamwork. And that's really, really important to remember. When I'm in the field, communication is also very important. But in that case, I will use, for example, both verbal and nonverbal communication, so that I can show people, what I'm asking of them, what I want them to share with me, and that I'm really interested in what they have to say. when I'm in the field, this nonverbal communication is really important.
I love how you've described how science is. It's not just being alone, wearing a lab coat behind a bench, but there's aspects of it that are incredibly social and important, and the partnerships that you need to build, and just the variety of it all. So, with that variety, though, there can be some challenges associated with that. And has photography aided you at all during any of those challenging times?
Yes, absolutely. And for me, the most challenging is to stay focused and not lose track of my objectives. And what I do is I have many pictures of nature on my desk. And I have this great friend who, she sends me postcards of these beautiful trees. And when I receive them, I'm really happy. And then I put them on my desk. And then when I get lost or overwhelmed, it really helps me to just stop and then look at these pictures and take a breath and then just start over.
There's a lot of information out there about how even just looking at pictures of trees or nature can help reduce your stress, make you healthier, make you happier. And so, check out our bonus content to find out more information of the scientific benefit of trees, because it's absolutely true. And I think it's great that you're tapping into the benefits of nature and trees whenever you're stressed out or challenged.
Aurelie, I would imagine that in working in some very remote parts of the world, to get information from community leaders and different tribes, that you get to travel a little bit as part of your research. Can you talk a little bit about how your research has allowed you to combine your love of travel with the love of science and the fieldwork that you get to do?
Studying how Native Americans or even other cultures use medicinal plants, that requires you, like you said, to be there with the people and travel to their villages or their cities, their homes, and interview them. And I've been really fortunate to travel quite a lot the past few years. Also, as a scientist, we need to attend meetings and conferences because we need to present our research to other scientists. We need to meet with other researchers so we can start collaboration or receive feedback. And most of the time, these conferences don't happen where I live, so I have to travel to these conferences. And recently, for example, I traveled to San Francisco.
Really, it's really great to listen to you talk about how you've been able to combine a lot of your interest and passion and kind of make a career for yourself, combining all of those interests, either using it as a communication tool or also the opportunities that come your way that involve all of those interests. We also have a few questions that come not from Jessica and I, but come from a few teachers who recently came on site and participated in an on-site workshop. And we shared with them some information about you, about your career, and some of your background in a profile type format. And they have a couple additional questions. So knowing that you get to travel, they're curious if you've ever gone on a trip that is taking you well outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's a nice question. And really the answer is every trip to a tribe or another country takes me out of my comfort zone. Because although I feel comfortable traveling and meeting new people, it's always challenging because you have to learn about the local culture, maybe speak a different language. And for example, when I worked in Nepal, I didn't know the language. And I didn't really know the culture. And sometimes I was the first foreigner that those villagers met. So those are not situations that I face in my everyday life. So it definitely takes me out of my comfort zone. But, that's great because that's how I learn. That's how I get new ideas and advance the research.
It's got to be really interesting pushing your comfort zone and challenging yourself. I mean, I can imagine that, traveling to Nepal, you had to have some great experiences there. And, what did you learn from traveling across the world and working with these local communities?
So there is a lot to learn. I learned to be flexible, for example. Most people are curious about where I come from and who I am. And I must always be grateful and feel blessed to live such experiences. And really being flexible helps me to keep an open mind and make the most out of my trip.
You have such an interesting position that really merges so many different worlds, so many different passions, that it really begs the question of how does one become an ethnopharmacologist? Can you talk a little bit about your education background and how you arrived at this point of your journey?
Yes, absolutely. And So there are different ways. There are many ways to become an ethnopharmacologist. It kind of depends on each person's interest. There are few programs, and they are not very common, in those universities. In France, for example, where I come from, there are no programs. So because ethnopharmacology is very interdisciplinary, I think the best is to learn and gain experience from various fields of study. So in my case, I decided that I wanted to learn about the plants first. I wanted to understand them, know how they grow, understand how people depend on them, this plant-people relationship. So I did my undergraduate and master's studies in agriculture and food science. And the great thing is that every year I did an internship. So I've worked in farms, plant nurseries, and also in research labs. And so that part of my training was really important for the fieldwork. Now, when I did my PhD, I chose a medicinal chemistry and molecular pharmacology program. And that's when I learned all about how drugs work and how to make drugs. But really, that's my personal path. And other people could choose to follow pharmacy or biology studies, for example. Or if one wants to focus more on the fieldwork, then in that case, social studies or botany would be really important. So each person needs to decide what they want to learn and kind of cherry pick in the different programs to really make your own training.
Aurelie, it's been really great to hear, about the variety within your position and traveling to some of these remote areas and working with community leaders, but then also getting to look at neurons in the lab and photograph them and communicate your research. So there's a lot of really cool aspects of your job. And I know this is going to be really hard to make you pick again, but what would be the best, or what do you think is one of the best parts of your job?
I mean, there are a lot of good things about my job, but I think I really like the fact that it's like an adventure. Research gives me the freedom to explore the unexplored. And, for example, I can decide what will be the next exciting experiment or the next tribe to visit. I can test my ideas and, hopefully create new knowledge that will be shared with others.
Your career has a lot of similar themes with, doing the research, both fieldwork and in the lab, but there's a lot of variety associated with that. So if you don't mind, can you try to describe your typical day-to-day? What does the average day in the life of Dr. Aurelie Jacquet look like?
Yes, so in the lab, I tend to organize my day by first taking care of myself. So I need to feed them and I need to make sure they're healthy. So I take my cells and I look at the microscope, see how they look. And then what I will do is set up my experiments that I have planned for that day. So some experiments take an hour and some take much longer. So if I don't have experiments to run in the afternoon, I like to keep that time for data analysis and also read the scientific literature. During the week, I also have meetings that I need to attend. So I will have to schedule those during my day. And each week will be different, but mostly that's kind of how I will organize my day in the lab. In the field, it's very different because my schedule depends on the availabilities of other people, the people I will interview that day. And it also depends on the weather because I cannot harvest plants when it rains. So the schedule is more flexible.
We do have one last question for you. It is one that we have asked all of our guests. And I know it will be challenging to pick just one, but can you tell us what your favorite plant is?
It is a challenging question because all the plants are great. I like all of them.
We agree. Though I have a bone to pick with poison ivy, but that's besides.
Except poison ivy. Who knows? Maybe it has some good medicinal properties. But I will pick red clover. It's a great little plant. It grows everywhere. And what's interesting is that some people say it's a weed, but really it has a lot of medicinal properties. It contains some compounds that we call isoflavones, and those compounds, they help balance hormones, so they can help women with the symptoms of menopause, for example. I've studied this extract based on the red clover, and I found that it has antioxidant and potentially neuroprotective properties in my cultured neurons. So I think this plant is, has a lot of potential. Now, always be careful and, before you take medicinal plants to ask your doctor, because these plants, although they are tiny and they seem, they're really cute, they are really powerful and they can interact with medication. So always keep that in mind.
Now, through your research, did a community recommend that plant to you to study?
Yes. When I was working with the Blackfeet Indians, one of the local persons suggested I study red clover.
Thank you so much, Aurelie, for being here today and sharing your journey and how you've combined such great passions for, healing the world and eradicating Parkinson's disease, to working with communities around the world, to capturing it all with photography. It's an honor to have you here today, and we're just very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
This episode of Planted, Finding Your Roots in STEM Careers, was made possible by the Morton Arboretum and Multimedia Services at College of DuPage. Check out additional resources and bonus content at www.mortonarb.org/planted podcast. This is Jessica Turner-Scoff
and Megan Wiesbrook,
and we hope you'll continue to join us as we journey into STEM careers.